Good afternoon and welcome to this public meeting of the Island Council for this 4th day of December 2024. I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the ceremony. Thank you. I would like you to please remain standing as we have a moment of silence to remember our former Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Antoine Solanier. Mr. Solanier passed away on the 25th of November and on Aruba, his island of birth. He served our island between 1999 and 2006. Before that, he was also a head of the finance department, and he served our island in those capacity as well. I'd like us now to have a moment of silence as we remember and reflect on his service to our island. Thank you. You may be seated. I have one additional announcement. Island Council member Mr. Orlando Wilson is absent with notice as he is away due to some medical issues. We now move on to agenda point number 2, approval of the agenda. We have received the agenda. We include the agenda presented, yes. Agenda point number 3, approval of the minutes of the Public Island Council meeting of October the 24th, 2024. Everyone that receives it, we can approve that, yes. Agenda point number 4, oral question time, according to Article 36. Mr. Charles.
On November 7th, I submitted questions to determine whether the Executive Council had reached out to relevant ministries to address the issue of the loss of subsidies for water, electricity, and internet, which would have a profound impact on the residents of the island, particularly low and fixed income residents. Since a response will not be provided in the 30-day time frame, I would like to address the most urgent questions here. The first question is, can the Executive Council share whether or not they have reached out to relevant ministries to discuss this matter? And what was the discussion, what the outcome of that discussion? And if the issue is not resolved by January, when the first impacts will be felt, does the Executive Council have a plan to address this matter?
Did you have any more questions?
That was
Item customers, you have a question?
Yeah, I just, based on the urgency of what was taking place a few weeks ago in terms of the dog issues around the island, I just have a question to find out from you, actually, Governor, in charge of public order and safety. What steps are being taken in terms of dealing with the dog issues currently faced on the island? This was something that came to light yesterday by a citizen in the island. On the island.
Ticks.
No, dog issues with dogs, free roaming dogs attacking goats, possibly also people.
I know the one with the ticks. Okay. Item customer meeting, Ms. Saskatchewan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took notice in some of the various minutes from the previous meetings that we have commitments pending since July of this year. And my first question is, can a commitment be made by the Executive Council that the commitments to the Island Council could be resolved in the first quarter of 2025? Currently, I think you all have heard on the island, everybody is talking about cost of living, prices going up, minimum wage again going up next year, and wondering if the Executive Council is already looking into possibilities or investigating ways to reduce the cost of living. And I know there's a lot of talks of basket of goods. I know we started publishing something by the economic department, but that has been stopped. And what's the plans of moving forward with that? Wondering what's the status of the decree, which should say that all prices should be visible in supermarkets. Then I think also with the cost of living, I saw on Bonaire maybe 2 weeks ago that the Executive Council is looking into protect the housing market on Bonaire. I'm wondering if that's something that the Executive Council of Saba is also maybe having conversations about. Also with the cost of living, possible price gouging, sorry. And while visiting Station during the Station Day festivities, I visited the Labor Department over there because I heard some concerns within the community about, how the work permits are processed, and maybe some people are subject to fence and handle. And I was just wondering, why doesn't the government of Saba carry out the island tools? And then my last two, I'm wondering why the community hasn't been updated on the situation at the school since October 24th in the last Island Council meeting. And I just learned that right now our fishermen are having issues again carrying fish over to St. Martin, and I'm just wondering if the Executive Council is aware of this and if it's already being looked into. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those questions. We'll take a 15-minute break in order to answer those questions. So we'll return at 3:45. This meeting is adjourned until 3:45. The meeting is reconvened. We were at agenda point number 4, oral question time in accordance with Article 36 of the Rules of Procedure of the Island Council. In accordance with Article 36, paragraph 2, Island Council member Mr. Charles had submitted his questions 24 hours in advance. Island Council lady Ms. Matthew and Island Council member Mr. Every, they had stated their questions today in the meeting. So some of those questions require more information. Those will be answered in the next Island Council meeting. For clarity's sake now, the questions posed by Island Council member Charles will be answered today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the questions asked by Mr. Charles, these were submitted in writing actually on November 7th, and the intention is to still honor the 30-day deadline. I believe we have 3 more days in order to submit the answers in writing. However, I will do my best to address the 2 questions that were asked here this afternoon. Definitely, there has been ongoing dialogue between Saba and the relevant ministries. I believe the same can be said for Station and Bonheur. So that's an ongoing process. I believe an important day will be on December 11th when there is a debate in the second chamber about social minimum, the impacts, subsidies, and everything associated with that for the islands. So I do believe that we will know a lot more after this debate and outcome. With regards to the areas mentioned, water, internet, and electricity, there's less of an impact right now on the water subsidies, mainly because the subsidy that's carrying over from 2024 into 2025 and perhaps even beyond that. And the dialogue is still ongoing with the water department about what is possible once that subsidy is depleted, but we don't expect any significant type of impact in 2025 with regards to the water rates. And I do believe we have sufficient time that we can ensure that those rates continue, but we have months that we can still continue to work on that. So it's less of an issue for water. With regards to the internet and telecommunications, I'm not sure if it has been formally announced as yet, but there will be a subsidy available next year that helps with the internet connections. I believe one subsidy is $35 and the other one is $15. So the $50 subsidy will continue for the internet connections in 2025. But again, I'm not sure if that has been formally announced as yet, but that is something that is materializing. And then for the electricity one, I believe this is the one that will have the greater impact, especially in the relatively near future. And the thing is that we're not necessarily sure yet which subsidies will be removed, how much they will be reduced, what the exact impact will be. Again, December 11th is a big day with regards to that, but then also the calculations that are made by ACM. So twice a year, ACM makes the calculations for the maximum tariffs, and these are only expected. I believe it's towards mid-January, towards the end of January. So once we have these numbers, we can actually see, what the impact will be, especially for the lower connections. So, although I don't have exact information about the impact and what can or cannot be possible, we have to wait on that information before we can see what steps, are possible to see if we can somehow mitigate the negative impact of having these subsidies removed or reduced.
Any follow-up questions with regard to answers from my end?
Thank you for that explanation. And I think the reason why I asked to bring it forward is because sometimes you're not sure how people in the community are receiving information and how they are reading what they read, how they are understanding what they read in the media. And I can tell you I've been approached by more than 1 or 2 persons who would like an explanation. And of course, it's very difficult as an council member to share information about what our government, because I can say, well, I read this in the newspaper, I read this online, but it's very difficult for me to say, well, what happens if it goes through. And if you read the statements by the state secretary, he seems very ambivalent and very unconcerned about what would happen to particularly vulnerable people. Even in the face of the NEBUD report, NEBUD had an explanatory statement on what they see that purchasing power would be diminished by 10%, which is no significant amount, insignificant amount, because last year, if you look at even government salaries, they've only raised something by 8%, and if a purchasing power goes down by 10%, then all that raises for nothing. If you look at the electricity, which you said is the largest, biggest amount that we're not sure what's going to happen with, you're talking about at least when I look at my bill, that's $70 being eliminated. So in some cases, that I don't know what percentage of people pay $7 more or whatever. But some bills would double, some bills would be at least a third of their bill. But it would create a significant increase in people's costs. And for me, I think we need to start looking and making sure that we can assist persons, even if not everybody, but those who really need it, into making sure that they can take care of their costs. And we shouldn't have. Like again, what you see in the Netherlands is with change of government, there is this difference of opinion, and I was quite honestly shocked, that the minister would just say, or the state secretary would just say, well, we'll deal with that in the spring memorandum. That's 5 months from now, and then we're not sure if you agree to whatever they propose in the spring memorandum. It might be for the end of the year that we actually see some relief. So I think it's very concerning to me and to us as well. I'm sure everyone else in this room as well is concerned about it. And we have fought extremely hard. We fought extremely hard over the last decade to ensure that the cost of living, the wages, the minimum wage, all of these things were addressed. And finally, in the last 2 years, we saw real movement, and now immediately we're seeing it being eroded. And people are concerned, and I share those concerns. And I think we need to share with them what we're doing to address their concerns and mitigate the impact of any loss of subsidy. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions? This is a response to that about electricity and other subsidies.
Okay, I just have a point of clarification.
Yeah.
The point I have, seeing as Mr. Charles did submit his questions within a 24-hour period, and it is related to the written questions that is due for the coming days, I also have written questions that were submitted, which is also due. But I also feel that those questions are, necessary in regards to the governance of the school. So my question is then, is it possible to get an update, at least because you can pick 2 questions of the written questions that falls within the 30 days, and I also have those questions. So maybe I just need a point of clarification if that is also allowed. Since the commission did go ahead and answer those questions. It's just
it's an island council.
Well, I can give clarity. So the reason why I chose that is because when I submitted those questions, I generally waited until the meeting. But at that time, the meeting was scheduled for the end of November. When I was speaking to, I think the land secretary, he said, well, you generally answer questions pretty quickly. So I was hoping, because it says 30 days max or less, so I was hoping that we would receive the response, and the response that we received even right now. And considering the urgency of the matter, and I said, let me just pull it out and ask it as an urgent question. So I didn't, I could have said, well, you didn't answer this question. I said, because if you want to flag it, there's also an opportunity to flag questions, written questions and answers in point 5. But I said rather than wait for point 5, which we then wanted to discuss in the previous meeting, I wanted to pull out, because they can also still send those answers, but I want to pull out these particular concerns so that, we can share with the public what is happening with this very relevant concern.
Is that clear? Well, and then also in that, I agree. Points that are about concern for the public should be addressed. And this is why I believe the governance of the schools is also is also urgent and should be addressed. So that's why I'm also choosing those points, if it's possible, for the commissioner to then give at least answer one or two of my questions. Even though I didn't submit them in the 24-hour period, but since we went down that road, I would love.
I think there's a difference.
No. It's about the oral question. That's why it's a point of clarity. I want to know. It's not about your questions. It's that you pose your questions within the 30-day period, and you pick up two questions, which is great. You wanted answers to those questions, but I also want some answers to my questions because I feel it also cannot wait.
First of all, let me just clarify, because I don't want to create this idea that I don't think my questions are more important than yours. So that's not at all my concern. And I think this is a discussion of procedure and process, and that's a whole different discussion. Personally, I don't object in the significance that you pointed out. If they have an update, that they can share it. However, I just want to create that I'm not, when I selected the questions, it was also in keeping with the rules of order. Right. And I think that's what we are having a discussion on. Should we keep within the rules of order? And if we keep within the rules of order, then questions that you would like to have responded to in a meeting should be sent in 24 hours in advance. Right. In this case, because, as you mentioned, the concerns are significant, I don't think my colleague would also disagree. And perhaps if the council has an opportunity to share some information that they can.
But with that being said, through you, Mr. Chairman, I would love to hear an update from the commissioners, if it's possible, in relation to the issues at the school, and specifically the questions that I posed. Of course, I can wait for the written answers, but if there's an update that needs to be shared with the public today, I think it would be very important, informative for the public.
Well, for me as chairman, I'd just like to say, following, this is all, process that we work go down together, so we have to, abide by the rules and such. There's always leeway, but the rules should be clearer, and then in evaluations we can assess and reassess and go over. But pertaining to this particular one, looking, we as council members,
I just want to
clarify that.
that I understand, and we're not here to stop people from asking questions, That part of the democratic process, the World Best says that is the instrument, the easiest instrument for a council member to use. However, I do think it's up to, you have to weigh whether or not it is possible to receive
because
a response.
It's clear with regard to, so we all need to go through the rules, and then not only the rules, also the memorandum, so the supplementary, the memorandum of the explanation, explanatory notes, and then that further clarifies whatever,
Because I just want to be clear, we don't want to shut down the opportunity to ask questions simply because of the procedural flaw. But however, I want to be clear that the procedures, in my opinion, are clear how questions should be asked.
I would just like to point out that you also, to me, it's like backtracking from the decision that was also just made. Because I think they both also had important questions before, and the decision was that it would be answered at a later time. So now if, again, not saying that you're, like the comment said, not saying that your question is not urgent, but then we're backtracking from what the chairman also just decided.
But so from my understanding, we did go down the road of opening up allowing them the questions that was supposed for within the 30-day period. So that's why I picked that up.
No.
Let me finish. So you submitted your questions in advance, within the 30-day ODS period, right? You did submit the questions 24 in advance to pull them out to say, hey, can I get answers to those urgent questions, right? So based on that, if the commissioner answered those questions, I felt that, okay, maybe then it would be also possible then he can answer some of my questions that were submitted as well. But it's clear to me that the rules
And it's also the framing, because
Yes.
I simply said that and I framed it in the question, that I had asked the question previously, and because of course they could have said, well, we're going to provide a response. So I wanted to say, well, I know you may provide a response, but however, I would like these questions to say. That was the intent of the question.
I think it's
All right. With that, we move on to agenda point number 5, incoming correspondence and announcements. We start with 5.1, Island Council, incoming and outgoing correspondence list. Anything to flag there?
Incoming correspondence? Yes.
5.1.
On November 22nd, there's a letter from the Ministry of Home Affairs and Community Relations in regards to the budget Saba 2025. I'd like to flag that from your incoming correspondence. Yes.
Any more? All right, then we move on to 5.2, Executive Council Decision List. Council PTC.
So I would like to flag 3 things. The first one is from October 8th, 3.04, and the title is Mental Health and Safety Research Report. So I would like to flag that. And the other 2 is from October 29th, and it's point 3.04, Domestic Safety, Point Phase 3, Community Information Center. And the final one is point 3.08, Phase 2, Domestic Safety Apartments.
Any more from the decision list?
Yes. On October 3rd, 3.0.3, Approval Learning and Development Program, PS, 2024-2027. October 22nd, 3.0.6, Installation of Christmas Lights. October 29th, 3.1.4, Safety Wall St. John's and Dancing Place. And 3.2.0, PNC calendar for approval.
All right. Any more from the decision list? Okay, 5.3, written questions to the Executive Council. 5.4, ancillary questions. Answer. Okay. We now move on to agenda point number 6, Island Council Proposal 2024, number 7, the third quarter implementation report and the third budget amendment. In accordance with Article 26 of the Rules of Procedure, this proposal is adopted without a roll call vote, as was suggested in the Central Committee meeting. Agenda point number 7, Island Council Proposal 2024, number 8, the fourth budget amendment 2024. So again, in accordance with Article 26 of the Rules of Procedure, the proposal is adopted without a roll call vote, as was agreed upon in the Central Committee meeting. The 8 motions. And number 9, closing. I would like to thank everyone for your presence here today and have a safe and enjoyable Saba Day this coming Friday. With that, this meeting is now